Leadership, at its essence, is not revealed when the waters are calm and the winds are favorable. It is revealed when the currents grow rough, when tension rises, when truths press forward that are uncomfortable to face. It is revealed in the moments we most wish to avoid, the moments of difficult conversations. It is easy, almost effortless, to lead when everyone agrees, when emotions are mild, when the stakes feel low. But those are not the moments that define a leader. A leader is forged in the fire of discomfort, in the decision to step toward rather than away from necessary but challenging dialogues. And yet, so often, even the most well-meaning leaders hesitate. We tell ourselves that the timing isn't right, that maybe the situation will improve on its own, that perhaps silence is kinder than truth. But avoidance, though it offers momentary relief, carries a heavy cost. Unspoken tensions fester beneath the surface. Misunderstandings harden into resentment. Trust, once stretched thin by avoidance, begins to fray invisibly, and what could have been addressed with courage becomes a fracture that runs deep. Difficult conversations, the ones where feedback must be given, boundaries must be drawn, misalignments must be named, are not interruptions to leadership. They are the very fabric of leadership itself. They are the crucible in which clarity, accountability, and authentic relationships are forged. Every time you avoid a difficult conversation, you trade long-term health for short-term comfort. You sacrifice the depth and strength of your leadership for the fleeting illusion of peace. But when you choose to step in not recklessly, not aggressively, but with groundedness, with care, with presence, you step into a deeper dimension of leadership. You become not just a manager of tasks, but a cultivator of trust. You show your team, your colleagues, your organization that truth matters more than comfort, that growth matters more than appearances, that relationships are strong enough to withstand honesty. Difficult conversations, when approached with courage and respect, are not relationship destroyers. They are relationship deepeners. They create the possibility for real alignment, for real healing, for real progress. And so, in this lesson, we will walk into the heart of what makes conversations difficult. We will explore why we avoid them, how we can prepare ourselves to face them, what principles can guide us through them with steadiness and humanity, how we can navigate emotional storms without losing our own center, and how we can ensure that the work of trust building continues long after the conversation ends. Because leadership is not defined by how you lead when it is easy. It is defined by how you lead when it is hard. And every difficult conversation you choose to enter with clarity, with care, and with courage is a step not only toward solving problems, but toward becoming the leader you were meant to be. Before we can step courageously into the space of difficult conversations, we must first confront, with brutal honesty and compassion, the reasons why we so often hesitate at the threshold. Because avoidance does not arise from malice or incompetence. It arises from deeply human fears that every leader carries within them, whether they admit it or not. One of the most common reasons for avoidance is the fear of conflict. We fear that if we speak the hard truth, the relationship will fracture, that the conversation will spiral out of control, that emotions will escalate beyond our capacity to manage them. We tell ourselves that preserving harmony, even a false harmony, is better than risking open tension. But what we often forget is that true harmony is not the absence of conflict. True harmony is the presence of trust strong enough to face conflict and survive it. Another powerful reason is the fear of being misunderstood or rejected. To engage in a difficult conversation is to step into vulnerability. It is to expose ourselves to the possibility that our intentions will be questioned, that our words will not land as we hope, that our efforts to lead with integrity might be met with anger, disappointment, or withdrawal. And because we are human, because we long to be seen, to be accepted, to belong, we sometimes silence ourselves to protect ourselves from the pain of misinterpretation or rejection. There is also the deep discomfort many of us feel with strong emotions, both others and our own. To walk into a difficult conversation is to walk into a space where emotions may rise: anger, sadness, fear, defensiveness. And if we have not learned to hold our own emotional intensity with steadiness, if we have not learned to be present without needing to fix or flee, we instinctively recoil. We tell ourselves it is better to wait, better to find the perfect time, better to let things cool down, and so important conversations are endlessly postponed. sometimes until the relationship itself has quietly collapsed under the weight of everything left unsaid. Avoidance, then, is not a weakness to be condemned. It is a fear to be understood. And understanding it, seeing it clearly, naming it without shame, is the first act of courage. Because leadership is not the absence of fear. It is the willingness to move through fear, to choose presence over avoidance, to choose growth over comfort. When you recognize the fears that hold you back, when you bring them into the light with compassion rather than judgment, you take back your power. You remember that difficult conversations are not to be feared, but to be honored, as sacred spaces where real leadership, real connection, and real change can begin. Before stepping into a difficult conversation, it is not the words you will say that require the most preparation. It is the inner posture you must cultivate, a posture of groundedness, clarity, and openness, because it is your presence, more than your script, that will shape the encounter. The first and most vital preparation is grounding yourself in purpose. You must be clear, in the quiet chambers of your own heart, why this conversation matters. Not as a weapon to be wielded, not as a victory to be won, but as an act of service to the relationship, to the team, to the greater mission you are both part of. When your purpose is anchored in care, in honesty, in a commitment to something larger than your own comfort or pride, that deeper intention will infuse your words and actions with a steadiness that no rehearsed technique could replicate. Equally important is the preparation of anticipating emotional dynamics without scripting outcomes. You cannot predict precisely how the other will respond. You cannot control their reactions, nor should you try. What you can do is imagine the emotional landscapes you may encounter, defensiveness, sadness, fear, anger, and prepare yourself not to resist them, not to fear them, but to meet them with presence. To stay grounded, breathing, listening, even when emotion swells. But beware, preparing is not scripting. Scripting leads to rigidity, to disappointment when the conversation inevitably moves in ways you did not foresee. Preparing means cultivating flexibility, a readiness to dance with the living flow of the moment rather than clinging to a fixed plan. And most of all, you must commit to presence rather than perfection. You will not say everything perfectly. You may stumble. You may be misunderstood. But if you show up fully, with authenticity, with care, with a willingness to listen as much as speak, the deeper message will be clear. You are here, not to dominate, not to punish, not to escape discomfort, but to engage honestly, to honor the relationship enough to speak truth. Presence is what people feel most deeply in a difficult conversation. More than the precision of your words, more than the elegance of your reasoning, it is your presence, your grounded, steady, open presence, that will determine whether the conversation fractures or transforms. Preparing for a difficult conversation is, in the end, an act of preparing yourself. To be bigger than your fear. To be steadier than your anxiety. To be more committed to truth and growth than to the fragile comforts of avoidance. And when you step in with that preparation, imperfect, human, courageous, you create the conditions for something extraordinary to happen. Not just resolution, but deeper trust, deeper understanding, deeper leadership. Once you have prepared yourself inwardly, grounded your purpose, steadied your emotions, committed to presence, the moment arrives when you must step into the actual conversation. And here, in the living, breathing unfolding of dialogue, there are principles that must guide you, not as rigid techniques, but as living practices that allow truth and trust to coexist even under the weight of difficulty. The first and most sacred principle is to lead with empathy and honesty, not accusation or defensiveness. It is easy, in the charged atmosphere of a difficult conversation, to fall into blame, to wield words as weapons, to protect yourself through sharpness or detachment. But leadership demands a higher path, to speak truth without violence, to name issues without diminishing dignity, to express your perspective with clarity while holding space for the other's humanity. Empathy does not mean softening the truth until it loses its meaning. It means delivering the truth in a way that the other person can hear, not through force, but through the undeniable authenticity of your care. Honesty without empathy becomes cruelty. Empathy without honesty becomes avoidance. Real leadership holds them together. I see you. I respect you. And I will still speak what needs to be spoken. The second principle is to focus on shared goals and mutual respect, even when tension rises. It is tempting, in the heat of emotion, to retreat into positions, to dig into separateness. But the conversation must remain anchored in something larger than individual egos, a shared commitment to truth, to growth, to the mission you are both part of. Keep naming the shared ground beneath the disagreement. We are both here because we care about this work. I believe we both want to find a way forward that honors our values. Such reminders are not rhetorical niceties. They are lifelines that pull the conversation back from the cliffs of adversarialism toward the path of constructive engagement. And the third principle, perhaps the hardest, is to listen deeply and resist the urge to rush toward solution or closure. The discomfort of a difficult conversation often tempts us to wrap it up quickly, to offer solutions before feelings have been heard, to move into action before understanding has been reached. But when you rush, you signal that the emotional reality of the other does not matter, that efficiency is more important than connection. And whatever agreement you reach in haste will be built on unstable ground. Listening deeply does not mean agreeing with everything you hear. It means honoring the dignity of the other's experience enough to truly receive it. It means allowing silence to breathe, allowing emotions to surface, allowing perspectives to be spoken fully before shaping the next step. When you lead a difficult conversation with empathy and honesty, when you anchor it in shared goals and mutual respect, when you listen more deeply than your own discomfort would prefer, you transform the conversation itself from a battlefield into a bridge that does not erase the difficulty, but carries both of you across it. No matter how carefully you prepare, no matter how skillfully you speak, emotions will rise in a difficult conversation. And this is not a sign that something has gone wrong. It is a sign that something real is happening. Strong emotions, anger, sadness, defensiveness, fear are not obstacles to leadership. They are invitations to deepen your presence, to widen your compassion, to hold space for truth that words alone cannot fully capture. But to respond well to these emotions, you must first understand them not as problems to be solved, but as energies to be witnessed, honored, and guided. The first task is to create space for emotion without being overwhelmed by it. When someone's anger flares, when their voice trembles with hurt, when tears surface or silence hardens into withdrawal, the impulse to retreat, to fix, or to push forward too quickly is strong. But leadership, true leadership, means staying. It means breathing through your own discomfort. It means holding the emotional weather with steadiness, neither absorbing it as your own nor rejecting it in fear. Presence is the antidote to emotional chaos. Presence that says, without needing to speak, I am here. I can hold this. You are safe to feel. Sometimes that presence is enough for emotions to move through and settle. Sometimes it calls for a simple human acknowledgement. I can see this is difficult. I can hear that this matters deeply to you. No solutions offered. No defenses raised. Just recognition. The second task is to regulate your own nervous system. When emotion rises in the room, your own body will react. Your heart will race. Your breath will shorten. Your muscles will tense. These are not failures. They are natural responses of a human being sensing potential threat. But if you are to lead the conversation rather than be led by your reactivity, you must bring awareness to these internal shifts. Breathe slowly. Feel your feet on the ground. Relax your shoulders. Speak more slowly, even if your mind is racing. Anchor yourself in the deeper purpose that brought you into this conversation. Not victory, but truth. Not domination, but connection. The leader who can stay steady when emotions swirl does not suppress feeling. They transcend fear of feeling. They model a new way of being, not only for themselves, but for everyone in the room. The way of facing life's intensity with open eyes, open heart, grounded feet. Strong emotions, when met with steady presence, do not destroy difficult conversations. They transform them. They move the dialogue from the surface to the heart of the matter, where real healing, real understanding, real change can begin. And so, do not fear the emotions that rise. Welcome them as part of the sacred work of leadership, the work of guiding not just thoughts, but hearts, not just actions, but human souls, through the storms of growth into the clear air of deeper connection. It is a seductive illusion to believe that once a difficult conversation is over, once the words have been spoken, the emotions expressed, the agreements tentatively made, the work is done. But real leadership knows better. Real leadership understands that a difficult conversation is not a finish line. It is a beginning. Trust, understanding, and change are not sealed by a single conversation. They are sealed or broken in what happens afterward, in the silent, watchful space of follow through. The first act of follow through is to recognize that the emotional impact of a hard conversation lingers far longer than the conversation itself. What was said may continue to echo inside the other person's mind, surfacing as doubt, as renewed hurt, as fragile hope. Leadership means staying attuned to this unseen aftermath, even when it would be easier to move on. Follow through begins with presence, with checking in not from duty, but from genuine care. How are you feeling after our conversation? Is there anything still on your mind that we should explore? These simple invitations can mean everything to someone who might otherwise feel alone with their unresolved emotions. True follow-through also demands visible action. If commitments were made during the conversation, new behaviors, clarified expectations, promises of support, these must not drift into forgetfulness. They must be honored in concrete, timely ways. Because words that are not backed by actions do not heal, they deepen mistrust. And sometimes, follow-through means continuing the dialogue, not assuming that everything was neatly resolved in one sitting. It means creating a culture where revisiting difficult topics is normal, not a source of shame. Where growth is understood as a process, not a single moment of breakthrough. To repair trust after a difficult conversation is to understand that the real test of leadership lies not in the drama of confrontation, but in the quiet consistency of care. In the choices you make when no one demands them. In the steady reaffirmation, through small, daily actions, that the relationship, the team, the shared purpose still matter deeply. Leadership is not measured by how elegantly you speak hard truths. It is measured by whether you stay, whether you care enough to nurture what is fragile, whether you are willing to walk the slower path of real restoration rather than rushing towards superficial closure. Because difficult conversations held with courage, opened with vulnerability, navigated with presence, and followed through with care are not sources of division. They are the crucibles where stronger relationships, deeper trust, and more resilient leadership are born. As we come to the end of this reflection on difficult conversations, I invite you to recognize the deeper truth that has been weaving itself through everything we have explored. Leadership is not proven in the easy conversations. It is proven in the hard ones. It is proven in the willingness to step toward what is uncomfortable, toward what is unresolved, toward the spaces where growth demands not comfort, but courage. Difficult conversations are not interruptions to leadership. They are the very moments when leadership becomes real. They are not threats to relationships, but opportunities to deepen them if we approach them with presence, with humility, with steady hands and open hearts. To hold a difficult conversation well is not to control it perfectly, nor to win it through argument or force. It is to show up authentically. It is to lead with empathy and clarity, even when emotions swirl and tension thickens the air. It is to listen more deeply than your own fear would prefer. It is to remain grounded when your instincts urge you to defend or flee. And most importantly, it is to understand that the conversation does not end when the words are spoken. It continues in the spaces between, in the silent language of actions, of presence, of follow-through. Every hard conversation you choose to hold with respect, every storm of emotion you choose to navigate with steady presence, every rupture you choose to repair with real care, all of it shapes who you are as a leader. It builds the invisible foundation upon which trust, resilience, and true collaboration are built. Leadership maturity is not revealed in how well you avoid difficulty. It is revealed in how bravely, how humanely, how consistently you engage with it. And so remember, when you next stand at the threshold of a conversation you would rather avoid, that you are standing at the gateway of your own evolution. Every difficult conversation held with presence is not just an act of leadership. It is an act of becoming stronger, becoming wiser, becoming, moment by moment, the leader worthy of the trust, the loyalty, the shared dreams of those you are called to serve. Lead with courage. Lead with humanity. Led, especially, through the conversations that scare you. Because it is there that the real work of leadership and the real depth of your own becoming truly begins.